All right, so today let's talk about biodiversity. And I know, it might sound like just another buzzword, right? Something about a bunch of plants and animals. But it's so much more than that. Think of it as the literal operating system for our entire planet. It's the code that keeps everything running for its survival and for ours.
So, let's use a metaphor here. What happens when nature's library starts to burn? And we're not talking about just any library. This is a collection of life's solutions, millions of years in the making. The answer to that question? Well, it's a lot more serious than you might think.
And here's the thing. That library is under threat. Right now. This whole idea of losing biodiversity, it's not some far-off abstract problem. No, this is a direct hit on the stable world we all depend on.
Yeah, check this out. This really shows you the domino effect. When we start losing pieces, it's not just, oh, one less pretty flower or one less furry animal. No way. We're talking about the entire system starting to fail. You see plant production start to tank. Ecosystems just can't bounce back from things like a drought. And suddenly, pests and diseases, they go completely haywire.
Okay, so the consequences are obviously dire. But to really get a handle on what's at stake, we need to back up a little and ask, what is biodiversity really? Because it's not just one simple thing. It's actually this really cool, complex idea with a few different layers.
So on the surface, it's pretty simple. Biodiversity is just, the variety of life on Earth. The term got super popular thanks to the sociobiologist Edward Wilson. But that simple definition, it's kind of like the cover of a really thick book. There's so much more inside.
To really get it, you have to look at it on 3 different levels. Think of it like zooming in and out with a camera, from the super tiny microscopic level all the way out to a global view.
All right, let's break down the first 2 levels here. On one side, you've got genetic diversity. This is the variety within a single species. It's all the different genes floating around in its gene pool. A great example is this medicinal plant, Rauwolfia vomitoria. Some have genes that make them better for one treatment, others for another. That's genetic diversity in action. Then, on the other side, you've got species diversity. This is the one we all think of first, right? It's just the number of different species in one area. Like how the Western Ghats in India are just jam-packed with different kinds of amphibians, way more than you'd find in the Eastern Ghats.
And finally, let's pull that camera lens all the way back. Now we're at ecological diversity. This is the big picture. We're talking about the variety of entire ecosystems. The difference between a lush rainforest and a dry desert, or a vibrant coral reef and a tangled mangrove forest. Each one is its own little world, playing by its own set of rules.
Okay, so now we have a good idea of what biodiversity is on all its levels. But where do you find it? It turns out it's not just scattered randomly across the globe. Nature has these hidden rules, these patterns that tell us where life really, truly thrives.
So one of the biggest rules of thumb is what scientists call the latitudinal gradient. Basically, the closer you get to the equator, the more life you find. It's that simple. But why? Well, a few big reasons. For one, the tropics have been pretty stable for millions of years, so evolution has had a long, uninterrupted party. The environment is also way more constant, less seasonal, and maybe most importantly, you've got a ton of solar energy beaming down, which is basically rocket fuel for the entire ecosystem.
Here's another rule that's super simple but really powerful. Ready? More area means more species. That's it. It just makes sense, right? A tiny little park in your neighborhood is going to have fewer types of birds and bugs than a huge national forest. It's totally intuitive, but what's cool is that we can actually describe it with a neat little bit of math.
So before we even look at the formula, let's just break down the pieces. It's not scary, I promise. S is just the number of species, species richness. A is the area we're looking at. And then Z and C are just numbers that kind of tune the formula for a specific place, like a rainforest versus an island. What we're doing here is basically building a simple model to connect the size of a place to how many critters can live there.
And boom, here's the formula itself. Now, don't get hung up on the log stuff. The main takeaway here is that this little equation is a huge tool for conservationists. It lets them predict with pretty good accuracy how many species we might lose if, say, a forest gets chopped down by half. It turns a simple observation, bigger is better, into a real scientific tool that helps us figure out exactly how big our nature reserves need to be.
Okay, so understanding these patterns is super important because it shows us just how much we have to lose, which brings us back to the crisis. What's actually causing all this damage? Well, the experts have nicknamed them the Evil Quartet, 4 major threats.
Yeah, they call them the Evil Quartet.
Number 1, the biggest one, is habitat loss and fragmentation. That's just us destroying or chopping up the homes where animals and plants live. Number 2 is overexploitation. We're basically taking stuff, fish, trees, you name it, faster than nature can replace it. Number 3, alien species invasions. These are species from other places that get introduced and just take over, pushing out the locals. And finally, number 4 is co-extinctions. This is the real tragic one. When one species disappears, anything that depended on it might disappear too. It's like pulling a Jenga block out and watching the tower fall.
So yeah, that's a pretty grim picture. But here's the good news. Knowing what the problem is, that's the first step to fixing it. And we actually have a pretty clear roadmap for how to fight back. It basically boils down to 2 main strategies.
On the one hand, you have in-situ conservation. In-situ just means in its natural habitat. This is the big picture stuff, protecting whole ecosystems by creating national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, that kind of thing. Then, on the other hand, you have ex-situ, which means outside its natural habitat. This is more like an emergency room. When a species is on the absolute brink of extinction, we take them out of the wild and protect them in places like zoos, botanical gardens, or even super high-tech gene banks. You need both. They're both absolutely critical.
So, we've got the tools, we know the enemy. But let's be real, this is a ton of work. It takes a lot of effort, money, and science. So, why bother? Why does this matter so much? Why should you care?
Well, how about this for a reason? Just think about the Amazon rainforest. One single ecosystem. That rainforest alone pumps out 20% of the oxygen in our atmosphere. 20%. That's not just some abstract number. That's literally every 5th breath you take. A free service, courtesy of a healthy planet.
And that's just one example. The reasons just keep stacking up. You've got the purely practical stuff, right? The food we eat, the wood we use to build, the incredible life-saving medicines we discover in plants. Then you have what are called ecosystem services. Things like bees and birds pollinating our crops so we can, eat. And beyond all that, there's a much deeper reason. It's just our moral duty. This amazing tapestry of life, it's our inheritance. It's our biological legacy. And I think this quote just says it all, doesn't it? These are our biological legacies and should be passed on to future generations. It's not about a resource to be used up. It's a treasure, a gift that we've been given and that we have a responsibility to pass on.
We're at this incredible crossroads in history. We understand the value of this legacy more than any generation before us, and we also understand the threats better than ever. So the final question really isn't for a handful of scientists or politicians anymore. It's a question for every single one of us. This is our biological legacy. What are we going to choose to pass on?